Hey, welcome to Light Church. Welcome to our virtual gathering. We're so excited you decided to join us for these few moments today.
Yeah, wherever you're tuning in from, we are so excited that you're here. We're going to head into some worship and a short message. I hope that this encourages you and inspires you today. We'll see you at the end.
See you.
Peace, bring it all to peace. The storm surrounding me, let it break. At your name still, and call the sea to still, the rage in me to still every wave. At your name, Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, breathe, call these bones to live, and call these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, 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 you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, 'cause your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is life, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is a light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, you silence fear. Jesus, Jesus, you make the darkness tremble. Jesus, Jesus, oh.
Hey, I wonder in your life, are you a overestimator or an underestimator? I know a little pattern in my life is I tend to walk through life overestimating my abilities and underestimating my challenges. It's one of those things that it just seems to keep repeating itself over my life. One of the ways that this popped its head up more recently is, say if I've not been to the gym in a really long time. So back in December, I decided, before the crazy rush of January, I'm gonna go back to the gym. Now, I hadn't been to the gym in, 6 months or something, 5 months. And like I said, I underestimate my challenges and overestimate my abilities. So I go to the gym, I have this workout in mind I wanna do. It'll be fine, it's nothing, I've done this 100 times before, I've been to the gym for years, this is totally within my ability to do. And I go, And it was, in the moment, it was difficult, but I completely overestimated how my body could handle this, because for the next 3, 5, 10 days, 2 weeks after it, I was hobbling around, I was aching. I kept saying to Holly, like, Holls, I've done something bad here. Like, I genuinely was in such a state. I was so sore. And it made me think as well, like, I've played football for years, and throughout the first sort of lockdown back in 2020, we played a lot of football, and I hadn't played for quite a while, and a friend of mine invited me to come play. I think it was in November, and it was freezing outside. But again, I played football for years. It's totally fine. I'm fit enough. I completely underestimating the challenge of what this would be like. And it was in a league, and there was like some pretty good players. And I remember 10 minutes in to this game, looking over at my friend and being like, I am gonna throw up or pass out or die. One of the three is gonna happen in this game. I was completely convinced as I went into there. As you imagine how good you're gonna be or how many goals you're gonna score, 10 minutes in, that reality, those dreams crashed by reality of just how unfit I actually was. And so I don't know, that's just the pattern of my life, and something that I've recognized in myself is that I tend to overestimate my ability and underestimate my challenge. But underestimation is one of those funny things I actually think as humans we often really struggle with. And if this year we want to be people that God has made us to be, we want to do what God has called us to do, then we need to look at this idea of underestimating. And the thing is this, maybe you struggle with underestimating things. Maybe you, like me, you tend to underestimate your challenges, and you find yourself in positions where you're just like, whoa, I don't actually think I am enough for this. And it's like the reality hits you so hard, and you suddenly realize just how inadequate you are for the challenge ahead. Or maybe the very thing that you often underestimate yourself before you've even given yourself a chance is you. Maybe you find that you underestimate yourself at every turn, every challenge, or when we're talking about future and what God has placed in us and purpose and all this sort of stuff. It can be really easy to look at this thing that we feel like, God's called me to start a family, or God's called me to start a business, or to change job, or to do this or that, whatever it might be in your life. You might actually look at it and go, I don't think I'm enough to do that. I don't think I have enough to do that. I don't think I'm capable of doing that. And we tend to underestimate ourselves. And it can be really easy to feel intimidated or insecure by either the problems of life or the idea of purpose and future. So there's a lot of factors that lead to this feeling of not being enough. There's a lot of things that can contribute to this. One of them is perception. So the way that we see a situation, the way that we see the thing that God's called us to, the way that we see ourselves, perception can be a really powerful tool in our journey of insecurity and not feeling enough to do things. The way we see things, it's far too big, or maybe it's not perception, but maybe for you it's past experiences. It is the way that you have previously experienced something, or the way that you have previously gone through something has made you today go, I wasn't enough before, I don't know if I'm going to be enough now. Or I tried this before and it didn't go right and it ended up really, really bad, and I just don't know why I would try and do this again. Maybe if it's not perception, it's past experiences, or maybe it's actually people. Maybe it's people, what people have said to you or what people have spoken over you in your life. That the old cliche of people saying, when I was young, a teacher said to me that you would never fill in the blank here. Maybe that is your actual experience, that someone in your life, a parent or someone close to you, a friend or someone in your life told you that you were not enough, or told you that you would never amount to anything, or told you that you would never be able to do that thing that you feel God has placed within you. Maybe people have been part of building that picture of I'm not enough. Or if it's not people, it might be pain. It might be some of the hurt that you carry. We all carry hurt and wounds and scars and things that we've experienced in our life. And it's not just the experience of it, but it's the hurt or the pain that we carry with us that seems to tell us, you'll never be able to make it through that. And you've got these scars or this pain to remind you of just how not enough you are. Maybe it's the size of the problem. In all honesty, if we want to talk about underestimating, there are so many times in my life that I've looked out and that whole pattern of overestimating my ability, underestimating my challenge, it sometimes flips on its head, and I actually look at things and go, that's far too big. That's far too big for me to be able to do on my own. That's far too big for me to be able to get through that. Like that. This person's had this crazy health crisis. I'm feeling like I'm losing my peace. The size of the problem can be one of those things that just makes us feel really small and insecure and intimidated. Why should we address this feeling of I'm not enough in our life? Well, this feeling of inadequacy, it affects or it permeates so many areas of our life. It affects the way we approach our purpose. It affects the way that we actually face problems in our life. Because we're all going to experience problems. We're all going to go through times in our life where we are under real significant pain, when we are fighting for our peace. If we feel right from the beginning that we are not enough, it can push us to deal with problems in a really dysfunctional or unhealthy way. This feeling of I'm not enough, this insecurity, this intimidation can actually affect our relationships. It can affect the way we relate to those people around us, those people who do truly, really love us. We can actually find ourselves pushing those people away because of the way we feel about ourselves. So I think we need to talk about this idea of not feeling enough. We need to have a look at what does the Bible say about this feeling that humanity seems to have the shared experience in of just always feeling inadequate or not able to make it through or do what it is we feel we have to do. But this is an interesting part to this, is that if we handle this feeling correctly, if we journey through this feeling of understanding where it comes from and understanding some of the things that push us into it, like some of the things I mentioned, like perception, past experience, people, pain, problems. If we can handle this correctly, what I know to be true in my own life is it can lead to a deepening in our relationship with God. It can lead to a new reliance on Him and His power. Because I think this is something that we're going to face in our lives. No matter how prepared we are, we will still be faced with the feeling of I'm not enough. But how we handle that feeling can either rip us from God, draw us away from God, or actually draw us towards Him and into a deeper relationship with Him. So let's have a look at what is the remedy. What's that thing? What does the Bible speak into? How do we address this feeling when it arises? Well, I want to look at a passage in the book of Judges in the Old Testament. We're going to look at chapter 6 and 7. I'm not going to be able to read it all out. It's quite two quite long chapters, but I want to summarize it for you. And it's about a guy called Gideon. Now, Gideon, he was an Israelite, and the Israelites, they were being essentially targeted by a group of people called the Midianites. Now, the Midianites were these brutal people. They would literally pillage all the crops. They would cut off food supplies. They would attack, and they essentially drove the Israelites into hiding. So they would hide in caves. They would hide in little shelters and hideaways in this like mountainous, rocky area. And the Midianites would come and they would settle on the crop fields. In other words, they would remove their ability to make food. And the Israelites were kind of cowering out of fear. And this guy Gideon is the main sort of, you could call him the hero of the story, but he probably wouldn't call himself a hero. We first pick up on this guy called Gideon, where he's hiding in a wine press, threshing wheat. So he's sorting out the wheat and putting the grain in a certain place, and he's going through this process, and he's doing it in hiding so that the Midianites can't get hold of them and kill him or attack him or do whatever it is they were going to do to him. And this guy called Gideon, he could completely relate with that feeling of just being like, what is going on? So he begins to talk to God and he prays, and it says that an angel of the Lord visited him. So he's speaking to God, a representative of God in this moment. And the representative, God's voice says to Gideon that I want you to go and defeat them. Okay, what's interesting is when God speaks to Gideon, the first thing he says is mighty warrior. And literally the Bible says, Gideon goes, pardon me, Lord. Kind of like, hey, creator of heaven and earth, do you mean me? I don't know if you've got the right guy here. I don't know if you think you're talking to someone else, but I'm not that guy. Me defeat the Midianites. What are you on about? Like, these are brutal people. We're in hiding. I am literally right now in this very moment hiding in a wine press so that I am not caught from doing my job. And God pretty much just says this to him, like, you're gonna do it. And then what happens is, in the time, a little bit of context is they believed in Yahweh and God. But the thing is, they had all these other sort of traditions, or there's a prophet known as Baal, and it kind of was like a representation of a god, or various different faces of a god, and they would create these sort of big altars to these other prophets, to these other gods. And so Gideon was living in a time where not everyone was just solely believing in God, or who they call Yahweh. So he's in this place where he just feels like he's on his own, and God's spoken to him, look, I'm going to deliver you from the Midianites. You're going to be this kind of like rescuer for your people. And Gideon's like, what's going on? And God tells him to go build an altar and to worship in the middle of it. And again, this crazy story unfolds where Gideon, he gathers all of this army together, and we're going to walk through this and have a look at a few elements of it. And what happens is there are 32,000 men that he gathers, and God basically says, no, we're not going to do it with 32,000 men, because then what will happen is you're all going to think that you did this. So what we're going to do is we're going to strip this down, and God strips it down to 300 men. And you can imagine Gideon in this moment being like, God, do you understand that there are a lot of those, and we had 32,000, and now we literally have 300. What is going on? And then in the craziest of circumstances, instead of raising an army to fight the Midianites, God tells them to get clay jars and to get torches and to get trumpets and stand around the ridge of the mountain, and to all at the same time blow their trumpets, lift up their torches, and break their jars. Now, stay with me. I know this sounds crazy. You're like, Dan, what are you on about? Where are you getting to? Go read Judges 6 and 7. You'll see this whole story. I'm summarizing it for you. But basically what happens is the Midianites see all these torches. They hear the broken jars. They hear the trumpets. They hear the men shouting, and they think it's this huge army coming to get them. And the Midianites actually flee, and some of them even turn on each other because it's the middle of the night and it's all crazy and frenzy. And Gideon, with God's help and God's guidance, manages to deliver Israel from the hands of the Midianites. That is a little bit of the picture of the story of Gideon. Now, what's interesting is Gideon can completely relate to that feeling that you and I would have on a regular basis of, are you sure you've picked up? And there's three sort of wrong things that Gideon presents to God. The first one is, I'm the wrong person. We're going to look at this. He also then says, I'm in the wrong environment. I'm not in the right place for someone that needs to be able to do this is in. And the third thing is the wrong method. He tells God, like, what? This is the wrong way of doing it. And then we see God's response to Gideon and his insecurity. And ultimately we know what happens. God delivered them. So we're going to look at this real quick. So the first thing Gideon says to God is when God says to him, mighty warrior, Gideon's like, pardon me, what are you chatting about? And God says, you're going to deliver the Israelites from the hands of the Midianites. And in verse 15 of chapter 6, Gideon says this, pardon me, my Lord. Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. Gideon pretty much says this, look, my family is the smallest, and I am the smallest of the smallest. In other words, he's saying to God, like, I'm not your guy. I don't have the strength for that. I don't have the ability for this. I hear what you're saying, but I'm the wrong person, God. I wonder if you've ever said that to God. When God said, I want you to step out and do this, and we've gone, are you sure? You want me to step out and do this? Or maybe, maybe your partner or husband, wife has gotten into a position and real difficult health crisis in their life, and you're stood there before God being like, God, I'm not strong enough to deal with this, to go through with this. I'm the wrong person for that. I don't think I can do this. Maybe in your life right now you can relate to Gideon. I'm the wrong guy. Are you sure? I'm the wrong guy. And this is God's response. God doesn't give him a whole battle plan. He doesn't say anything other to him than this. Gideon, I will be with you. God promises his presence. I want to keep encouraging you with this. Anything that God asks you to do, he is not expecting you to do on your own. How many times do we go up to God like we receive our assignment from him? And then he pats us on the head and go off you go and come back when you've finished. That is not the nature of God. God is like, hey, I want you to do this, but I'm gonna be in it with you. I'm gonna do it with you. God's response to Gideon saying, I'm the wrong person, was for God to say, well, I will be with you. I will be with you. In another verse, he says to Gideon, am I not sending you? In other words, Gideon, understand what I'm saying here. Creator of heaven and earth, all powerful, all knowing, all loving. I'm saying, let's go and do this, and you're telling me you're the wrong guy? Well, Gideon, it was never about you in the first place. It was never about you in the first place. So I want to encourage you this morning. If God has asked you to do something, it was never about you in the first place. God didn't look at you and go, oh yeah, they've got everything they need to be able to do what I'm asking them to do. It's like, no, God has asked you to do things, and the only way you can do it is to be in relationship with him as you live it out. 1 Thessalonians 5:24 says this, the one who calls you is faithful, and he will do it. The one who calls you is faithful. In other words, he always comes through on his promise, and he will do what he says he will do. So in your life right now, you're watching this virtual gathering this morning, you're feeling like you are just not enough. God is going to help you to do what he has called you to do. And in this moment, the easiest thing you could feel like doing is cowering away and being like, God, you've got the wrong person. But if God has asked you, he is faithful and he will do it. So I am the wrong person. That's something Gideon says to God. The second thing is this, I'm in the wrong environment. I'm in the wrong environment. So 25:26, God is saying to Gideon, he says this, take the second bull from your father's herd, the one 7 years old. Tear down your father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Then build a proper kind of altar to the Lord your God on top of this height, using the wood from the Asherah pole that you cut down, and then offer the second bull as a burnt offering. So God basically says to Gideon, look, I know you're in a place here where no one believes the same as you. I know you're in a place here where no one can hear my voice like you can hear my voice. But what I want you to do is to offer an alternative, to worship in the middle. So in this time to worship, they would bring these sacrifices to God and offer them to God. And this was their worship. And so God basically says, look, I want you to take down this altar that your family has built. So his own family, his own tribe, his own people weren't just worshiping God, they were worshiping multiple gods. And God is basically saying to Gideon, go and offer an alternative here. Demonstrate a different way of approaching these problems. So Gideon goes and he cuts down this pole that was kind of this symbol of this other god, Baal. And he begins to build an altar to God, just in obedience to God. And it's one of these crazy things where he could have felt in this moment like, I'm just not in the right place to do it, God. If only circumstances were different. If only like I had these people around me and we all believed the same thing, we could start this movement and we had some more money, we had some more resource, then we'd be able to do it. So Gideon was in this place. He was on his own. No one thought like him. No one was in this same position. And God's response to him when Gideon's like, this isn't going to work, is demonstrate an alternative and worship in the middle. And what's interesting is this, is when Gideon builds this altar to God, he's making a public declaration, a public statement here, saying, I'm not going to put my faith in these other gods. I'm going to put my faith in the only God who can actually deliver us from the Midianites. So by offering this alternative, Gideon was actually publicly demonstrating God's power and publicly saying that this idol of Baal has completely no power and is a dead god. So in this moment, Gideon could have been like, I'm not going to do this. I'm intimidated. I'm not enough. My environment's not enough. Actually, God used him in the middle of it to demonstrate his power and to demonstrate something different. And I want to encourage you this morning, your environment might be completely against you. Your environment might just feel like it is not set up for you to do what God has asked you to do. Well, listen to this. Be obedient and honor God in the middle of it. Worship him in the middle of it and demonstrate, provide an alternative, a beautiful alternative to the hollow ways that you see around you. And God will begin to use your faithfulness, use your obedience. Even when it looks like nothing is happening, he will use your obedience to demonstrate his goodness, his character, his heart, his glory in your circumstance. You might just be the person that God wants to use in the spheres of life that he has placed you. So don't underestimate what God can do by looking around at your life and your circumstance and the place that you find yourself in, your environment, and being like, I don't think God can do anything here. Because it might just be that God is doing something through you in that environment. Don't underestimate God and his ability to change. So Gideon says, I'm not enough. My environment's not enough. And the third thing he says, it's just the wrong method. Have you ever felt like that? You're looking at God and being like, God, things aren't shaping up. I thought we were going to do this. I thought there was a plan. I thought there was a way that we were going to do this. Well, Gideon says this. I told you he had 32,000 men. And God whittled them down to 300. A little side note here, in the Bible, numbers hold like a little bit of significance, in the sense of they kind of demonstrate a theme of a story when numbers are present. And you know, when we watch Jaws, when we hear that music, we know, because we know the film, that the shark is coming. In the Bible, when you see numbers, they kind of act as these like thematical markers, being like something's going to happen. And the number 300 actually stands out as a signifier of divine deliverance. So people reading this around the time would have understood that when they saw that God whittled it down to 300, they were like, something's happening here. This isn't just a small number of people. This is a specific number of people designed to demonstrate something here, that God is at work even when it looks like nothing is happening, or it looks like things aren't going to plan. So God stripped it down to 300 people. Can you imagine Gideon in this moment freaking out, being like, God, we had everything we needed here. Like, I'm already going out on a limb. I've already cut down my father's altar. I've already, I'm out in public here. I've gathered all these people. Everyone is terrified. I was willing to die for this thing. And now you're telling me that we need to be really, really crazy and strip it down to 300 people. And what was God's response to this? How did God do this? God used an unlikely method. Okay, when Gideon was like, it's the wrong method, God changed the perception, changed his perspective to show that actually it wasn't the wrong method. It was an unlikely method, but it was the method that God wanted to use. And they used the jars, the trumpets, and the torches, and God delivered the Israelites. And what's interesting is if Gideon had done it his way with 32,000 men, there would have been bloodshed, there would have been a war, there would have been all of this pain and hurt. But when God did it, not saying that every time God delivers you, you are free from pain or hurt, but when God did it in the story of Gideon, no one was harmed on the Israelites. They were able to be delivered with far fewer men. And the Midianites completely fled out of fear and terror that they were going to lose their own lives. if you're listening right now and you're just feeling like the things that you are facing are causing you to doubt that you are enough to push through this, that you are maybe feeling like, I just don't know if I have what it takes, I want to encourage you this. Do not miss the fact that God will often use unlikely methods to deliver you in your life, to deliver you through circumstances. So many times we get angry at God. Why are you not moving? And God is simply just saying, I am moving, just not in the way that you expected me to move. So many times in my own life, I've been like, God, can you deliver me from this? And He's just said to trust. Trust me, because I'm doing something far bigger than even you understand or realize. God will always come through, but it often won't be how you expect. And God delivered the Israelites in a way that actually saw them safer and with far less hurt and pain and life lost. Whereas if they did it Gideon's way, it would have been completely different. So Gideon stood, he told God, I'm the wrong guy. I'm in the wrong environment and this is the wrong method. You're stripping us down to 300 people, but God used an unlikely method to deliver them. So what does this mean for us today? We're listening, great story, Dan, that's cool. Yeah, it's in the Bible, it happened a really long time ago. I'm not in a position where I need to gather troops or whatever. Well, when you face trials in your life or when you're thinking about your future or purpose, the first thing that we often want to do when it comes to these things that we look at is to look at ourselves and to go, I don't think I'm enough for this. The first thing we often want to do is to look inwards, to look at what we don't have or to look at what we do have and just think, how are we going to get through this? But I want to encourage you this morning, when you face a trial in your life, when you talk about your future, when you talk about what God has called you to do, I want to encourage you to use these opportunities, to use these moments as triggers to cause you to look up at God, to cause you to look at Him and His character. See, this is the thing, when I said at the beginning, these feelings of not being enough, the thing is, they're actually true. It's not false at all. But the thing is, what happens in our life is when we get into the state of I am not enough, what happens is we stay there. We look at ourselves, we keep our eyes on ourselves and we say, yeah, I'm not enough. But what God wants to do is to recognize, yeah, you are not enough, but I am the one who is here with you. I am the one that is all powerful. I am the one that will see you through. So what can you do in this very moment? I want to encourage you to do two things. The first one, write down some of these areas in your life where you feel like you're just not enough. Write down some of these areas, and it might be family, it might be relational, job, financial, health, I don't know. And I simply want you to just do this. Ask God to come and be your strength. Ask God to come and be your wisdom. Ask God to come and be your endurance. Give you the ability to persist. When you write these things down and acknowledge, on my own, I am not enough. But with God, all things are possible, especially the things that He has called us to do, the things that are in His will for you to do. And the second thing is this, be obedient to what God has asked you to do. Honor and worship Him in the middle of those feelings of just not feeling enough. You don't know what God is up to. Imagine if every problem that we faced in our life was actually pushing us closer to God. Imagine if that every time that you look at your future and begin to feel overwhelmed, or that you feel that you are too small, that actually these moments, because you've conditioned yourself to recognize these as triggers, every time you face something, you're triggered to look up and recognize how big, how able, how powerful God is. This is a perspective change for you this morning. If you are facing something, I pray that it actually becomes a trigger for you to recognize how good and how faithful God is. Or maybe this morning, when we're talking about this idea of God delivering us, maybe this morning actually you're looking at your life being like, I don't really know this God. How do I know that He's actually going to deliver me? Well, 2,000 years ago, God stepped into human history. He sent Himself. Because we are so lost and broken in our own sin. What is sin? Sin is these things that we do in our life that tear us away from God. They are self-sabotaging things that are literally designed in our life to stop us from living in relationship with God, that stop us from being able to get through these things in our life, that stop us from being able to honor God and glorify God. Maybe in your own life you just feel like I've never been able to get through those things. It feels like sin is just such a heavy thing in my life, and maybe like Gideon, it feels like it's stolen so much from you. Well, Jesus came 2,000 years ago for that very reason. So he could live a human life and die on a cross to take on your sin, to take on that shame, that brokenness, that guilt, to take on that inadequacy that we feel, and to close that separation from humanity and God. And he rose again 3 days later after lying dead in a tomb to give me and you a hope for our future in relationship with God. If you have never said yes to Jesus this morning, if you have never accepted that deliverance from sin, that ability to be a new creation in this life, all you need to do is say, Jesus, I give you my life. I take all of me, my sin, all my brokenness, my hopes, my dreams, my future, and I give it over to you. Would you deliver me from myself, deliver me from my sin? And I promise you this morning, your life will change forever. And for those watching this morning that just feel like I am not enough, I don't have what it takes, my prayer for you is that in this very moment, that you would take your eyes off your inadequacy and place it on Him who is all powerful, all knowing, all loving, all able, and He wants to do this life and walk it through with you. I pray today that you would just be filled with such a confidence in yourself, not because of who you are, but because of who He is. And if you have Jesus living within you, you know that you can face the future with hope and with confidence.
What a morning. I hope that you enjoyed it. And it may be this morning that you've got some questions, or you want to connect with us, or maybe even you cross that line of faith and you decide to become a follower of Jesus. Then make sure you get in contact with us at hello@light.church. But if you just want to connect with us, then you can head to light.church/connect and fill out that form there.
Yeah, definitely. We would love to hear from you. We are far more than just these virtual gatherings, and we want you to be part of the community. But also, if you have not subscribed to this YouTube channel yet or liked this video, what are you doing? Stop what you're doing right now. Go subscribe, go like this video. But also, you can find us on social media. We post every week. We want to keep you encouraged, inspired, and topped up. So make sure you're following us on Facebook, Instagram, all of those things. But thank you so much for joining us today. We hope today has encouraged you, inspired you to be all that God has made you to be. We'll see you real soon.